Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and as my mailbox was in fact inundated with questions regarding the Pax East stuff that was revealed, this seems like the best place to put it because you were all sending questions about it. And let's have a little discussion. I think what we could take away from this is Celestalon gets a little bit nervous whenever a developer takes a microphone, because Celestalon, as I pointed out in the previous video regarding Walls of Draenor, is particularly good at revealing information and then spinning it in a nice, tidy way to make people feel excited about changes which might necessarily be bad. But when the developers get hold of the microphone, oh dear. Not to say that everything was bad here. It was actually a lot of good stuff. It reminded me a little bit of the Xbox reveal, if you watched that E3, which was garrisons. They are putting a lot of stock in garrisons, but I kind of feel that's because garrisons are one of the things that are really aesthetic and people are going to get to customize and have fun with, and they just know it's going to be a success. If you didn't see this style of garrisons coming, of course, there was a huge article reveal of what the garrisons will look like, how they're going to work. Basically, if you've done the tillers, then you know how garrisons work. They're exactly the fucking same in terms of setting them up. And if you didn't see that coming, wow, you must have been crazy. The tillers was a little experiment. Even I enjoyed it. As somebody who hates little mini games to a point, especially ones that need sort of tending to, then I'm not that impressed with them. But the tiller stuff for a few weeks, I didn't finish them. I didn't get the 4 plots. Was kind of fun. I kind of like setting up my little farm and all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, oh, yeah, it's Farmville. I'm not really into that. I'm not raiding. I don't need all this crap. And therefore, I'll leave it the hell alone. But garrisons are just way more expansive than that. The basic premise was there. People loved it. People rejoiced in it. People enjoyed tending to their little gardens every day. And then we just went, okay, this thing works. Let's just make that really huge and really big. The garrisons, I think, are actually very cool. Very cool. I'm kind of excited about them. I know they're going to be a bit part of the game. There's no doubt about that. It's not going to be a gameplay overhaul. It's not going to be a major mechanic change. But what they've done with it looks kind of nice. It looks kind of cool. We're not going to get to have everything. You're going to be able to pick and choose and swap things around. And no matter how much I like the idea of garrisons, I just know they're a microtransaction bomb waiting to go off. But I'm kind of okay with that as well. If people want to doll up their own private little city, go for it. I really don't care. As long as there are some things I can collect in games like raid rewards and boss heads and stick them in there, and I'm not paying for them. Because I certainly am not the kind of guy to be paying microtransactions for aesthetic stuff. That's just not in my nature whatsoever. But still, I can understand that there's a lot of people who do enjoy that stuff. And the garrison stuff, for all you asking, and am I still excited about them? Yeah, sure. I think they're going to be pretty cool. I think they're going to be a nice aid to people playing. Now, the bad stuff that I did mention earlier. Let's just put it this way. They pretty much confirmed that the annual pass that we got with Mr. Pandaria was let's just put it as it is, a climactic fuck-up of epic proportions. And they're absolutely not willing to do that again. Big shock horror, right? Who the fuck didn't see that coming? I know I wasn't expecting anything like that. But what we can take away is Walls of Draenor is a long-ass way away. It's a long way away. More than we really expected. In fact, they kind of said in not too subtle words is they were strong-armed into revealing that Alpha was actually out there and doing stuff. They didn't want to. They had to hold it back. After all, Blizzard is a business, and this kind of stuff at PAX East was a big reminder that Blizzard is a business. They would have liked to have revealed Alpha was in existence, as they knew people would data mine it much earlier, but they couldn't because they had Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls coming. They also had the Nax Ramus content coming for Hearthstone. They didn't want to bury that, so they had to actually hold it away from their employees from playing at home for a long-ass time until that information came out. Now that information is out, of course, we are now very much aware that Alpha does exist. Alpha has existed for a long time. They said quite a while. That translates as a long time. And that beta is a long way away. There's going to be far less people. Hey, this ties into a lot of things. They had over 1 million people invited to the Mr. Pandaria beta, and it was a colossal waste of time. I tell you, as somebody who played the beta very much. I played the beta a lot. Not only was I raiding, normal and heroic beta testing, all the raids in beta, but I was testing out everything for you guys. We were leveling, we were doing all this kinds of stuff, showing up for new classes, doing anything I could to show you guys the beta. There was not a lot of people there. What there were were a hell of a lot of people complaining they had not had their beta invite, using beta just to try out different classes and basically just goof around, try out some 5-mans, make some pre-mades, just fuck around and just waste time on the server, waste a server spot. They had over 1 million people and hardly any feedback except from the usual guys who they want to give the beta to, which are the raiders, the PvPers, those guys who are going to go in there, they're going to try the hardest to test things out, give feedback. What they had is invited everybody and their mother, usual WoW forum kind of guys, who then went in and just goofed around, fucked about, and basically claimed they were already playing Mists of Pandaria. They're not going to repeat that again. I would also put out there that if I was one of the guys who worked on Diablo 3, now I'm not saying that this is exactly true, but I would definitely say that the annual pass may have contributed to the overwhelming hatred of Diablo 3. Diablo 3's original incarnation, obviously it's picked up a lot since, was universally panned pretty much as being a very boring, not quite what we wanted game. It didn't live up to the hype at all. Not to say it was a bad game. I quite enjoyed it the first couple of times I played through the game. But after that, I was done with it. I wasn't the intended audience for Diablo 3, and I wasn't the guy who knew what I was getting into. I didn't play Diablo 2. Didn't play it at all. Didn't know what Diablo was all about. When I got in there, I was like, oh, this isn't the game for me. And I'm pretty sure there was a lot of other people who bought the annual pass. I bought it so I could definitely get a Mists of Pandaria beta to show you guys stuff, who were probably in the same boat. And if I was on the business side of things, I would say, hey, you know what? We sold this game to a lot of people who weren't prepared for it and didn't know what they were getting into. And I can say that because I was one of those guys. And when I picked up Diablo 3, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, not for me. And I would certainly put down the overwhelming acclaim. Not entirely, obviously, because it wasn't a very good game in general. That's universally agreed. But I would certainly say that giving the game to absolutely everybody, especially people who just play World of Warcraft, is probably not a good idea. Let's just not do the annual pass again. That would be really bad. And so we're not going to get that. So beta is a long-ass way away. They gave out some invites at Pax East, but they basically said, you know what? You've got an invite. You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait. It's not coming for a while, which is really sad because we are severely lacking content in Mists of Pandaria right now. We are in the dry spell, and it reminds me of the Black Temple dry spell. There's only so long this can continue before people go, I have no reason to log in. No reason at all. Especially those people who aren't intending to raid at all in Mists of Pandaria and are waiting for Warlords of Draenor to pick up their game. I always suggest to you guys, don't do that. Raid now while people are dropping out, because people are feeling this way. I don't need to kill Heroic Garrosh Hellscream for the 50th time. I don't need to do that. Still no word on whether we're not going to get some sort of complimentary boss. I'm not talking Helion. Helion was killed on his very first day. Not exactly what people were hoping for after that dry spell. But I don't think we're going to get the Sunwell either, which is also what came well after the Black Temple. So hopefully they're going to do something with WoW. I'm a little saddened. You can tell in my voice. I'm a little sad that Warlords is a long way away. Maybe this is just business speak and it's actually, hey, you know what? We were bullshitting you. We've seen that many times. It's, hey, we're bullshitting you. It's a month away, really. But yeah, according to this, we're a long way off. Beta, let alone release of the game. And we're going to have less people playing the beta. Which means fucking Mop is around for a lot longer. Maybe I'll finally get bothered to get a legendary cloak. On to the tanking stuff. Yeah, we've got kind of overstepped our bounds, haven't we? They're kind of making resolve. It's going to be fine. Vengeance didn't really work out too well. But now we've entered an era where tanks expect to do DPS. Very hard to come away from that, right? You can't give somebody a carrot and then take it away. You gave tanks damage. A lot of the current tanks are basing their play because they wanted to do damage and tank. So we currently have a lot of the brand new guys. A lot of the guys who started in Mists of Pandaria or maybe gave tanking a try for the first time in Mists of Pandaria. Remember when this first came in, we saw a lot of tanks wearing DPS gear. You might not be able to cast your mind back that far, but it happened. Lots and lots of tanks just wearing pure DPS gear, gemming for DPS, all DPS trinkets because, lol, Vengeance, I can do mad deeps. So we can't take that away. Blizzard's kind of suffering from that. We're going to have to give them some kind of damage in terms of these wonderful little bonuses we'll get on top of our stats. And trying to make Resolve sound like the good thing. Tanking is kind of messed up in my eyes right now. Kind of messed up. Again, I just want to see threat back. Threat was our thing. We didn't have DPS, we had TPS, and we were more than fine with that. Tanks didn't expect to do damage because it had its own style of play, its own little genre to fill, its own little niche, which worked really well. And we don't have that, and they're trying to fix it in a kind of desperate way. We've had so many changes to tanking over the last 2 expansions. If you look at Kata, we had all sorts of mixes and matches of what tanking was about. Then we have Mr. Pandaria, which was working in this idea of active mitigation, and the Vengeance model came in and people were like, what? And then we have Resolve coming in, which is basing us on some healing and stuff, and tanking's in a very, very odd place. They tried to slip in a little note saying, hey, you know what? The Sable Ash mechanic is coming back because now people can actively mitigate. As somebody who dealt with that mechanic lots and lots of times, I can't help but think again of Mother Sharaz. And Mother Sharaz, essentially, if you never did that on progression, which I assume a lot of you didn't, especially as a tank, that mechanic basically involved standing completely still and not selecting the boss. That would cause her to parry and then kill the actual tank. So they want to bring that back because now you can actually actively mitigate. Let's see what incarnation it comes with, because if actively mitigate means generating some rage and then using shield block or shield barrier or whatever your class's equivalent is, still not that fun. What they are saying though is tank swapping at X stacks is not great. No, it is not. My god, it's a horrendous mechanic which has plagued Mr. Pandaria like a fucking cancer. And I can't express that enough. I am sick to fucking death. It's one of the reasons I just can't stand tanking anymore. Swap at X mount. Swap at X mount or you'll get stunned. Or you'll take too much damage. Oh my god, I'm bored. I'm so fucking bored. Tank swapping because you had X debuff on every fucking fight is just a crying joke. If you look at some of the bosses in Siege of Orgrimmar, fucking Galakras, Immersius, all of them. Iron Juggernaut, the Shaman, the fucking General. It just goes on and on and on with just tank swap at the right time. Oh, God, give us a couple of things to be doing. At least on Dark Shaman, I can kind of tank that boss. But we've got to a stage now where the bosses are so reliant on having some sort of tank swap rotation that people are bringing just 3 tanks and let 1 tank go one way and 2 tanks deal with another one just to cope with your crappy tank swap mechanic. Fucking boring. Doesn't need it. So thank God that's going away. Gives me a reason to bother tanking again if I can do something fun and go and tank some other stuff. Even tank some ads every now and again. Christ. Thank God for Garrosh. Moving on to the healing. You guys were talking about the healing. I'm kind of worried. One of the big lines that came out of this, is we want this to feel more dynamic. We don't want it to feel one-dimensional. And then, Mother of God Bliss, this is where Celestalon really lost his fucking mind, is your example was Holy Paladins. No! Stop! Stop! I can imagine him waving his arms like, please stop it! Please stop what you're doing! Oh my god. The example for not being one-dimensional was, hey, at the start of the expansion you'll cast Holy Light. And then as you get better gear, you'll fill in with more Flash of Lights. One-dimensional. I swapped button 3 for button 4. At least on my key bindings. I really wish they wouldn't have used that. But it does give the idea is this going to become more one-dimensional? Are we going backwards in time as to what healing was like? I don't know if you've experienced it, but certainly if you're a Wrath of the Lich King area and below, you are fully aware of what one-dimensional healing is because you just heal a person. If you're a tank healer, you heal that. And that is it. If you're the AoE healer, you heal the raid. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I can't decide. I'm mixed in my overview of what that's like. There might be so many people not used to that style that they actually really like it now. It only became a huge problem round about Wrath of the Lich King area, which was vanilla and an expansion and then into another expansion before people were like, this is fucking boring. Especially for the Paladins, which is why I was so delighted to see that the example of it not being one-dimensional was the switch from Holy Lights over to more Flash of Lights. Oh my god. It was cool to see that the DPS are going to have less interesting, less contribution towards healing. 10-man might suffer a bit from that, but 10-man doesn't really exist anymore, so big fucking whoop-de-doo there. But I never liked it. DPSers don't want to heal. It's the be-all and end-all. If we're not going to have hybrid classes anymore who do a mix of both in a sort of equal manner, then asking the DPS to heal is just a pain in the ass. They don't like doing it. They don't want to do it. Even in the best guilds in the world, it's like, who's got tranquility? You'll see all the Moonkins go suddenly fucking quiet and the Ferals just can't hear anything over there, shredding awesome tiger sounds. So, yeah, I'm kind of glad that it was a Mr. Pandaria idea where they were like, hey, you know what? Let's have all the DPS have some sort of contribution towards the healing and defensive cooldowns. DPS don't want that. Come on, the DPS wants to kill, 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 kill. The DPS don't want to kill, heal, heal, kill, kill, kill. I always remember the enhancement shaman getting a little bit pissed in my old guild because he had to drop a healing rain every now and again, even though it cost him nothing and it was on global. Dude, that was a lightning bolt. That's all you could say to him is like, I've lost my lightning bolt. So, is it going to be one-dimensional? It seems to me on the face of that what the devs are saying, this is more one-dimensional than we have now. So, healers, we'll do a brief overview of the classes as well. We got a little bit more info. It's glad to see that the alpha data mine stuff is alpha data mine stuff and not the final stuff. Always a big reminder, guys, that the alpha stuff is alpha stuff. Okay, lots and lots can change. But basically, Blizzard confirmed everything that we talked about over Mr. Pandaria in various videos, and that was actually pretty cool because I see a lot of tweets come after I make a video from you guys tweeting these things at Blizz, trying to get some answers about some ideas we've discussed or some theories we've come up with, and then them getting back to us. So at least from our community, we seem to have got it pretty bang on over Mr. Pandaria, which is very cool. Especially recent stuff we talked about, which was universally brought up, by the way. I'm not saying it specifically from us by any means. I'm not that egotistical. But Army of the Dead coming back for all specs. Yes! Thank God! Army of the Dead is just part of the grandeur. As I said in the web show, it's not the fact that it's a DPS cooldown that I particularly care about. It's part of the fun of the big pull before before pulling the boss. It's part of that whole countdown, the tension, the nervousness. Army of the Dead contributes really well to that. And you might think, pretty sure that's just a shitty reason. It's a good DPS cooldown. You know what? Sometimes it's nice to just have a little bit of spectacle. And that's what it's all about. We're still playing a game, and that bit of spectacle, the edging forward of the melee classes to get as close as possible, just waiting for that tank to fire off his first spell. All that stuff is all very intrinsic to the fun of raiding for me. And Army of the Dead was a big part of that. And I'm really glad to see that come. I'm really glad that it's up on the table. And I'm pretty sure if they're saying it, it's going to come back. As we said, symbiosis is a cool idea. We said this in the class changes video, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense and it causes a lot of bloat. Yeah, it does. It's a great idea in theory, but the theory when you place it on the table and then the tables, the spreadsheets come out, come on, man. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. If it did something that was much more simplified, then it's probably a cool spell. But what I actually see is just druids just picking it up because it's there. They can play without it more than fine, but they pick it up because they have the opportunity to. As we've said so many times over, hunters don't make any sense. All the specs are the fucking same. It makes no interest. What does query a little bit is survival put more emphasis on dots. Okay. Multi-dotting and traps. When you say multi-dotting and traps, I feel like it's an AoE spec. I can't help but read there. Its emphasis is dots, multi-dotting, and traps. And then all I read there is, oh, it's the AoE spec. And I can't help but feel that way, although I'm sure Blizz is going to balance it out. And then marksman is going to be more emphasis on higher damage cast time spells. That doesn't sound fun either to me. A lot of cast time. Sure, I kind of get the idea of pulling the bow back and firing it off. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. But we also mix in a lot of instant cast stuff. I don't know. It's going to separate. What we can say for sure is it's going to separate out the ideas of the specs and make them a little bit more interesting. Is it a great way to go? I don't know. Until I test it out, I don't know. But I wasn't overly thrilled with that idea. Any mage stuff that was mentioned, I just don't care. Mages just look a fucking horrible mess to me. And I can't help but feel that way. And I know you mages out there are going to be like, no, it's fine. I'm actually really excited about these changes. Cool, man. I'm really glad you are. But the stuff like the prismatic crystal and the talent changes and just the way mages are just kind of being kept in their kind of cliche little idea is, yeah, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it at all. I'm really not. There's so many band-aid fixes is my problem with the mages. Like they're like, hey, you know what? We fixed it up with enhanced fireball. It's fine. It's another band-aid fix. You're just adding to in a time where we're trying to reduce tooltips as much as possible, which is what Warlords of Draenor is all about. You're slapping more stuff onto tooltips for the mages as band-aid little fixes. It seems like the mages are due a rework. They do a rework. The basics are there. The arcane, the fire, and the frost. Everyone expects that of the mage. How it plays out can be all up for grabs. We can switch it around. We can do other stuff. Mages are the masters of magic, which means they have endless possibilities of how their spells intertwine and work together. What we're trying to do is keep mages in the same kind of way and band-aid fix them to meet the new criteria of a modern game. What that strikes me as is the same thing as the Guardian Druids are going through, where they were band-aid fixed with little shitty cooldowns to try and make them fit into the new model without just saying, okay, we're giving Guardian its own spec. Let's see what we can do with this. But then the fear comes in is we can't change it too much. People might not like it. The people are used to a certain style of playing. You know what? You changed it with the Warlocks. And they were fine with it. You overhauled the Warlocks completely. You kept some stuff with the same names and just changed how they worked. And you know what? The Warlocks had a grand old expansion. So maybe the Mages are due that as well. When it came to the Monk, nothing we haven't heard before, unfortunately, which is Mistweaver needs some changes. Yes. Spirit isn't valuable. Duh. Fist weaving's intended to be split. Duh. It was boring nonsense. Wasn't into that. Ret's getting a deep boost. Yoo-hoo-hoo. The Rogues. The Rogues are getting their definitions as well. But I discussed that in the previous video, so I'm fine with that. The exact idea of combat being more brutal, assassination being more focused. Love that. The Shaman. The Shaman didn't get much of a say. And you know I desperately want the Shaman to get some loving, because they don't seem to have found their place in the new era. They're the only class I think that is really lagging behind overall in the new model of things. They still have too many buttons. I saw that there was some tweets earlier in the week regarding the removal of some buttons, but still keeping as many. I'm playing my Shaman at the moment just to try and just refresh my mind a little bit, but still not feeling it. It's still clunky. It's still not working out. It's got to be said. It's just a little bit clunky. It's really not working out too well. On a great note, the Berserker stance got mentioned. Again, community feedback, man. It works. Shout from the rooftops. Shout from the rooftops. I don't care what Berserker stance does, but it feels like it's an integral part of the warrior. Let's do something with it. Let my warrior go berserk. I don't care if it's a cooldown, don't do whatever. But changes to Berserker stance are on the table, considering the changes and bringing it back, because it is an integral part of being a raging warrior, is going berserk. Let's face fact, going berserk. And you may have noticed I left it till last, because this was one of the most talked about things in the questions you guys sent me, was the Shadow Priests. Yeah, you guys should be pissed. The Shadow Priests seem to be just getting a big middle finger, and they have been for the last couple of months, and it's not fair. I flat out agree with the guy's sentiments who sent me questions, which is, this is bullshit, and I kind of agree with you. Shadow Priest, I'll just read what the reply was. Shadow Priest won't need completely different sets of gear for single target and AoE fights. They could swap out a few slots of gear to use on a single target fight, though. Translation, you're going to need 2 sets of gear on your Shadow Priest. And they're still not convinced you're going to do adequate single target DPS because your AoE is pretty good. Wow. That is the big fuck you to the Shadow Priest. What's going on there? I don't know. I really don't know. Obviously, they've released some of the changes to the Shadow Priest, and some of you guys got happy. Some of you guys had mixed ideas, because still the standing comment on gameplay-wise was, if you're really good at AoE, then that's fine that your single target is weaker. That is still there. That's still in their minds. So now you're suggesting that if Blizzard tells you you might want to, you could swap out some gear, you're going to want to swap out gear. You're going to want to do that. Remember, we're talking about the guys who believe you're super hardcore if you're not rocking a healing trinket in your DPS set. They already know this is a problem. Why even say this? I'm baffled that this comment was allowed to go out, and hopefully they regret it, because this just says to me you haven't figured out how to make Shadow Priest work correctly. I want to play a Shadow Priest. I do. I love my Shadow Priest, even if he doesn't do the top DPS. I'm not interested in DPS right now, because it's not my main. I don't have mega gear on it, and generally I just rock some LFRs on my Shadow Priest. But I enjoy the fuck out of it when I'm playing it. What I'd like to know is if it was my main, that it would be suitable for a raid. Now you're telling me that maybe I'm not going to be pretty good at single target DPS. I'm going to suffer a little bit because my AoE is pretty strong. And I might need another set of gear in order to compete. I think that's pretty tough. Overall, Pax East was a mixed bag. Again, giving the developers a microphone, you've got to get a little bit wary. But still, interesting information. The saddest part, though, in conclusion, WoD is a long way away, guys. Unfortunately, WoD is a long way away. So let's just watch our screenshots happily and cry and cry and cry. You take it easy, guys. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.